Sanibona, ngaphambi singene kwivideo namuhla, ngithi angithathe lethuba ngibonge isupport nothando enikhombise lona lingaphezulu kokucabanga kwethu. Siyacela niqhubeke nisisupport njalo ngokubuka amavideo ethu, ungakhohlwa ukukhomenta, ushare, ulike. Siyafisa ukuzwa umbono wakho. Sicela ke singene kwivideo namuhla. UMinister we-Higher Education and Training uveze ama-appointments akawenzile ukuthi usedecide yena ukuthi aka-appointe ama-administrators. I-DA yaveza ukungakwamukeli lokho, yazi yabhalela ngisho u-chairperson we-Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Siyenzile leyo video leyo, uSihlelunzi naye wavela kule video. Ke ngifuna ukucaphuna i-whistleblower ezosivezela i-corruption eyenzeka lapha kwi-construction CETA, ikakhulukazi ngoba udaba lakhona lizothinta uMelusi Shezi lo beka-CEO uresignile. Ngifuna ke kumcaphuna cause bekakhuluma ne-Sunday Times, Sunday World, bekakhuluma ne-Sunday World, lamaphepha ngiyaphambanisa, bekakhuluma ne-Sunday World kwi-podcast yabo. So ngifuna ukucaphunela i-whistleblower ikhulume nge-corruption eyenzeka ku-construction CETA, i-corruption abeyazi ukuthi yenzeka, ne-corruption abeyingxenye yayo, bese ngicaphuna yena akhulume futhi nge-corruption eyenzeka ku-construction CETA. Ngicabanga ukuthi mangenze kanjalo kuzobe kufair. Kodwa before ngiya kude, funa ngicaphuna uSihlelunzi sizwe ukuthi bona njenge-EFF ithini argument yabo makuza kulo daba lwama-CETA. Uma ke ngizocaphuna ama-whistleblower ngoba amavideo akhona amada, sizokudlala ivideo, ngizorecorda nje ngikwenzele i-audio, izobalula kanjalo. Ngicela uzwe.
I think really for the first time what we are starting to see is that the ANC is really being taken to task in the manner in which it utilizes its power in the higher education ministry. It is becoming clear that for many years they've been looting the CETAs, they've been advancing patronage in higher education because they had a majority in parliament. Many of the decisions which they were taking would go unnoticed at worst, or at best they won't even bring it to parliament. So for the first time, we now have an opportunity to hold them accountable, to hold the executive accountable, and scrutinize each and every decision that they're taking. Because we thought the new minister was going to come and, clean up and have transparency. Those are the words he used in his first conference. But we're starting to see that actually he is no different, because even before we can arrive at how corrupt the ANC comrades are that he has decided to appoint as administrators, he has violated the Skill Development Act. He has violated Section 14A. He has violated 14.1 as well as 15.1 as well as 15. So the problem wasn't the individual which we removed in the form of the former Minister of Higher Education, but there seems to be a problem in the ANC internally when it comes to the individuals that they deploy to the Ministry of Higher Education and Training.
But then Sitta raises the question, the Minister of Higher Education or higher education in South Africa, was it always just used as, you're saying here that maybe this has always been happening. It's just that people are waking up to it because of this government of national unity that is now in place, that gives rise to different kind of pressures being put into certain sectors where we may have overlooked it in the past. Because right now it just feels as though we're using these skills development platforms as a way of looting money. It just sounds, whether I mention Oba Nkwane or Litlokhonolo Masoga or Zukile Mvalo, it just feels as though the people or the sector in itself, which is skills development, it seems as though it's a sector of industry that we are now trying to use to line up people's pockets.
The argument we try to make to the new minister, is that, look, why do you want to place a CETA under administration and have one individual taking decisions on behalf of the board, on behalf of the CEO, when you were already under the process of appointing a legitimate board? Because the nice thing about a board is that you have got a diverse and democratized board and group of individuals. Others are coming from the private sector, others are coming from, public sector, the unions, the workers, and the various constituencies around the CETA. So at least there, even if you've got one or two bad apples, but we know that we've got eyes and ears of people who are coming at particular, constituency, who are going to be taking decisions as a collective Now, the problem with having one individual is that they take up the powers of a full board. They get to decide unilaterally who, which contracts and how to disperse, like I said, the patronage that they will be dispersing for sure. They choose the CEO. They undermine many other governance processes under King's Code that a typical, public institution would have to undergo. In fact, it makes the looting much easier when you've got a single individual taking up on behalf of an entire board. So it makes absolutely no sense, even if we were to put aside the fact that the appointed individuals are corrupt, even if we were to put aside the fact that the minister himself actually violated this act. Just on basic common sense, why would you want one person to perform the role that is supposed to be performed by 10 or 15 or more people in a democratized board? I think that's the other question that South Africans should ask, on top of the many other irregularities that are at play.
So now what is the EFF going to be doing?
Look, we will do what we do best. We're not going to sit aside and allow them to violate the Skills Act. We're not going to allow the minister continue in the culture of using our CETAs. The most painful thing here is that we've got these NEETUs that we like to speak about. They are not in education. They are not in any training. They are sitting at home. They are not doing anything. Because post-secondary education is not just about universities and TVET colleges. In fact, those institutions only absorb about 1.8 million students in public institutions. A lot of them are sitting in the townships, are sitting in the villages. Those are the ones who are supposed to be using the CETAs to upskill them, to bring them back to economic activity. But what we're seeing now really is very painful. So we're going to take the minister to task. Our first point of call, as we said, we did write to him. We're waiting for a response. Thereafter, we're going to bring him to the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education and Training, where he must be questioned about the decision that he has taken. But we're willing to go all the way, as we did with the previous minister, which is very unfortunate because we were hoping with the introduction of a new minister, we're now going to get to focus on much more productive things in the department and to see how we can broaden and expand higher education to serve the many young people in South Africa who don't find themselves in universities and don't find themselves in TVET colleges. But we're here again, we're fighting with the new minister.
Umzuleko Sihlelonzi echaza kungani be-challenge lesinqumo sika-minister ukuthi uphula umthetho nanokuthi why funeka akhethe nje umuntu oyedwa, funeka athathe iy'nqumo kanti funeka kube nebhodi ngoba ukukhethwa komuntu oyedwa ozothatha iy'nqumo kuzovula ithuba elihle lokuthi ama-cadres aluthe ngoba vele iyona nto abafuna ukuyenza. Asidluleke manje siye kwi-whistleblower. Lo sisokhuluma la wayekhuluma kwi-outer uyi-whistleblower uzokhuluma nge-construction CETA. Ngifuna ngiqale ngicaphune yena. Emveni kwakhe bese sicaphuna uMelusi Shezi ngoba kukhulunywa ngaye la. Lo bekayi-CEO ye-construction CETA. Sizozwa yena ukuthi uthini maye ekhuluma nge-corruption eyenzeka lapha ku-CETA. Kodwa akekho phela umuntu owake wama wathi nami bengenza ubugebengu manje ngizothatha omunye umuntu ozokwazi ukukhipha ubugebengu obabenziwa nguye noba benzeka phambi kwakhe ebese ngizokwazi ukuthi ngicaphune yena akhiphe yena ubugebengu okwenziwa ngabanye.
He's promoted, he's sitting in his office.
Really?
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, so then you provided a report to who? Did you?
I did a report to the audit committee because at the time I didn't trust the CEO.
Yeah.
In any case, he was implicated in some of the tenders there. Right. Like, for example, the ones the way they didn't attend the briefing session, he was the BEC chairperson at the time.
The CEO?
The acting CEO. After Ilusa left in 2018 May, they appointed an acting CEO, which was Robert Seminya.
Yeah.
He was also implicated on the same tender. So there was no point in me going to him and trying to report. And besides, I had figured out that he was also working with the chairperson because he came clean in one of the tender for building again, where he told me that the chairperson wanted him to appoint a specific company when my subordinate came to me and told me that something wrong is happening in BEC. he told me that the chairperson asked him to appoint. Then I figured out even going to the chairperson is a waste of time. But I then thought, okay, let me report it to the audit committee. I believe they are ethical, so they will do the right thing.
This is the board audit committee.
Yes. Then in 2019 August, I reported the protected disclosure to the audit committee with all the irregularities. At the time, nothing seemed to have happened up until the administration. Then when we were moved out of SCM during administration, and the administrator told us he's investigating, Duja was there to do the investigation. Indeed, we were interviewed, SCM officials, on the things that I had raised on the protected disclosure.
Right.
Yeah, they interviewed us and asked us some questions. We participated. And then in 2021, September, I received a call from Mr. Shezi telling me that the investigation is concluded, then we can go back to
the Duja
SCM.
investigation
Yes.
has been concluded, and you could go back to work.
Yeah, we could go back to SCM.
Go back to supply chain management. That was your role that you originally put in for. Okay, and then tell us how long that lasted.
It didn't last that long because after we were then reinstated to SCM, obviously there were people that were doing my job. Before I take over the role, I need to review and make sure that everything is correctly and ask them questions whilst they're still there, because they were still there. They had not done the handover. They were still doing the SCM work on the few days that we came in. I then reviewed the files and I picked up a lot of irregularities.
Really?
Yes, and I compiled the report with these irregularities and gave it to the CEO.
Give us an example of one or two of those irregularities.
For example, one example is the appointment of Vodacom. They appointed Vodacom for MPLS. When you look at the process, none of the bidders met the requirements. None of the bidders met the requirements. I'll make an example because I can't remember on top of my head. Let's say, for example, one of the requirements was that maybe a company needed to have a PhD. I'll make an example. And then none of the companies had PhD. Then during the evaluation, BEC recommended and said, okay, none of the bidders are meeting the requirements. When it got to BAC, where Shezi was sitting as the BAC chairperson,
He's the CEO and sitting as
he
the
was not the CEO at the
Okay,
time. He
okay.
was the advisor to the administrator.
okay.
Yeah, he was sitting there as the BAC chairperson. He wrote a memo to relax a mandatory requirement after the tender had closed.
Right?
Yeah, they relaxed the mandatory requirements because they were supposed to cancel it
Yeah.
and re-advertise, reissue it and remove that mandatory
Yeah.
so that everyone is given a fair chance, because there are bidders that did not bid because they did not have that specific requirement. Now it get relaxed after the tender is closed, and then Vodacom, he motivated why it should be relaxed, and for some mind-boggling reason it was approved by the administrator that it can be relaxed. That is a huge irregularity. You cannot relax mandatory after
So
you have appointed.
you in coming back into your supply chain management role, evaluate all of these bids that had gone, tenders that were being evaluated, and found all these irregularities.
Yeah, one of them, it was the Coin Invest. Coin Invest was also one of the
Coinvest.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a company that came out of Services Sitta and Ndile Nongogo. I was also promoting them, and we've raised a lot of concerns.
Yeah, there was also an irregularity in how they were appointed, and I raised it with him. So what also shocked me is how he then said we must institute a probity review. Because probity review, so that it can then rubber stamp my findings, the irregularities that I found out before any decisions can be made. And I told him that a probity review it's normally done before the appointment.
Yeah.
So what's the point of doing it now? Because we have already appointed. He said, no, I want to be sure before we can make any decisions. It's only now that I'm realizing that actually he was trying to investigate himself and see how badly is he implicated, so that he can try and fix some of these things.
Yeah.
Indeed, the probity company was appointed, and on their draft report, they picked up the same issues I picked up
Right.
when it was shared with us. Based on that draft report, I then made recommendations. I looked at, like, IT, for example. You can't just up and cancel an IT contract. I said we need to give them a notice and cancel the contract in 6 months whilst we are restarting a new process so that we stop the irregularity.
Yeah.
Some of them I would recommend that they must stop immediately. He didn't, because I'm sure someone was benefiting from some of these entities.
Yeah.
I reported in 22 November 2021. You can go onto the CETA and check if any of those companies were paid after those irregularities were picked up. You find that they were paid. If they were cancelled, for example, Coin Invest, it was cancelled after there was a noise at NSFAS about Coin Invest. Otherwise, it was not going to be cancelled.
Yeah.
He knew in 2022 November, on the 22nd of November 2021 already that there's an irregularity on Coin Invest. He did not stop it. He continued to pay. I'm not sure who was benefiting through that, because it could have been cancelled and it was not going to affect
It
how
could
the,
have been cancelled and he didn't.
it was not cancelled. They can go back to the books and check. It was not cancelled on in November or December or the following year. You can check after I picked up how much money was paid up until it was cancelled. And I think what pushed the cancellation was the media articles that came out on Coin Invest at NSFAS.
That's the work that we uncovered at NSFAS. And again, the CoinVest came through from Services CETA with Andile Nangogo. Again, I remind the viewers that Andile Nangogo and Shezi are business partners as well. They have a relationship with each other. So, to me, I there's so much that I sense going on. So what happened? I want to get to the next section. But then you were eventually suspended again. You were sent home on the basis of what?
And then obviously I would pick up some interferences from Mr. Shezi. Like from time to time, he's interfering into the processes. In one instance, there was a tender that we were doing for promotional material. And in that tender, 5 Star was a recommended bidder.
Another bidder that is linked to Services CETA and NSFAS.
So 5 Star was a recommended bidder. So the evaluation report was still in the process of being signed, right? Because we were signing them electronically. So it was still in the process of being signed. So normally what I did with the BAC is that because he was pushing this, it was an agent project for him. So he was pushing for a quick appointment. I thought maybe there's something that needed a promotional material or something that needed to be delivered urgently. So when I was circulating the report to the BAC members, I would CC him so that he can see what is the status. So I sent the report to the BAC chairperson to sign. The BAC chairperson, obviously he CC'd. The BAC chairperson signed and returned the report to me. So when she returns it to me, then I will send it to the next member to sign. So because he CC'd and he can see the chairperson has signed, he took the evaluation report before other members could even sign.
Yeah.
It was only the chairperson that had signed.
Right.
He took it, he signed it, and then he got the administrator to sign the report that is incomplete. The SCM process is not concluded. In our view, as in SCM, it's still circulating for signatures.
Right.
He signed it, and then after signing it, he drafted an appointment letter. A whole CEO drafting an appointment letter. After drafting it, he sends it to the service provider and he tells them that I heard that you have been appointed. From who? I heard that you have been appointed, and then at the same time, he gives them something to do, that they need to review something for him. And then when I picked that up, I sent him an email, I think, or an SMS. I told him, Mr. Shezi, what are you doing? Why are you sending appointment letters to the service providers? Why are you doing that? Because that is an SCM function.
Yeah.
And besides, the evaluation process is not concluded yet, because the process is such that after everyone has signed, yes, the report will go to him to sign as the CEO. Then he will then give the administrator to sign. After the administrator has signed, before we can issue an appointment letter, according to the Treasury regulation, we need to check if the service provider is tax compliant. So he sent the appointment letter. We continued with our own process of getting the report signed and following the process. After it was signed and he re-signed the report, the report again after everyone has signed, then when we checked, the service provider was non-compliant.
Doesn't the SAMIA should have been picked up before the bid evaluation process, right?
No. You because remember CSD, how it happens, it updates every 24 hours. So if you check it at the BEC, by the time you appoint, they could be non-compliant.
Okay.
So that's why the regulation even specifies that you check before the appointment. So
ya le nkulumo yinde kakhulu kodwa ngifisa ukukuvezela ukuthi lento eliwa i-EFF manje yakenzeka ngaphambilini lapho khona babefake khona i-administrator la kwakuthathwa wonke lezi nqumo lezi ngoba ibhodi la lingekho kodwa phela kuneteam esukusebenza naye and naye ushezi sizomcaphuna manje into engiyithanda ngaye uyakhuluma ngecorruption eyenzeka lapha ku-construction CETA kodwa akakhulumi ngalezi zinto lezi whistleblower ezivezayo ingakho ngithe angiyenze le video ngikulethela ukuthi kahle kahle yini le yenza ukuthi lama political parties alwise lolu daba kangaka hayi ngoba elwa nominister kodwa kufanele sizizwe lezi zinto ngoba izinto ezenzakalayo sesitshelile kusitho i-whistleblower wasitshela yonke into eyenzakalayo futhi kakhulukazi lethinta uShezi lo obeka yi-CEO sizocaphuna ivideo yakhe uShezi njengoba ade ekhuluma neSunday World uzwe yena ukuthi uma yena esekhuluma ngecorruption eyenzeka lapha ku-construction CETA yenzeka kanjani emveni kwaShezi sobe sesiyivala le video ngicela uzwe la.
It was under administration, which meant that it had almost totally collapsed. So one would ask that since your takeover, or probably before we get there, what were the challenges at the time? Because obviously you found it right at the bottom. What were the issues that caused it to be under administration that you identified when you arrived?
Definitely, because although I arrived at the tail end of it, there was a diagnosis that was done by the administrator at the beginning.
Yeah.
Before the CETA was put under administration, the department had done a forensic investigation on all these procurement irregularities, which that report preliminarily concluded, yes, there was an issue. NSA, which is the National Skills Authority, also went in to review governance issues and they confirmed there were indicators of governance failures, which at a later stage was indeed confirmed by the forensic investigation report that was commissioned by the then minister at the time, which is now called the Tuja report, that on the 14th of May we were in Parliament to table that report to the parliamentarians, which confirmed that there was total collapse of governance. The committees of the boards were operating without delegations. Others took decisions that were supposed to have been taken by the entire board. They were never ratified. Some awarded entities where they were conflicted and having interest in those entities. There was also a total collapse in our accreditation and certification processes, in that there were no standard procedures and there were delays in producing certificate for the learners that would have gone through programs, to an extent that some will have to wait 3 to 5 years to get their certificates. There were allegations that certain people were getting accreditation even when they were not qualifying, meaning they had paid bribes to somebody. And all those were the issues that even up to today are sitting in the Tuja report that is yet to be released to the public, which is the other reason why we see what's going on in other media publications. You have a right. You can write to our minister or the deputy of the department. Yes, because the report was commissioned by the minister. Then the investigation was concluded in October 2021. On 5 November, it was handed over to the minister. Up to today, then it's he's the one that needs to be able to.
Let's hope the new minister will do something about it.
Let's hope, because millions were spent and it's a matter of public interest that people need to know what was happening. Those who may feel that they are implicated wrongly, they have rights also to exercise if they want to take reports on review. But when you look also on procurement issues, you find a disaster which also reflects even the things that are written about today. When you read that report, you'll start to see the story that actually certain people back then when they were interviewed, they said things that they were going to use certain information to defend themselves, because they are cited in that Tuja report as the ones who were capable of that corruption that happened, where some were even making bidders who didn't attend compulsory briefing session to sign the briefing session attendance registered off-site, and then awarding tenders in a manner that was showing that there were elements of corruption. So those were the issues that took this CETA to under administration. And the worst one was the issue of the pension fund, where overnight there was a decision made that the employer, being the CETA, will contribute 100% to the pension fund. If you had medical aid, CETA will contribute 100%. You contribute nothing as an employee. And whereas others were also including on the scheme their siblings, where they had no legal guardianship. And then somebody who's an adult and not disabled, maybe age 36, was still being paid medical aid because he's your dependent, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And then salaries were being increased more than once a year. Then depending what you were expected to do, they were called generous and industrious contribution. Fat bonuses were paid to an extent up to today. Our payroll is exorbitant. The last salary survey that was done, CETA is paying higher than a JSE listed company Discover. That's how bad things went. And those things up to today are causing issues because they are issues that you cannot solve overnight.
And in these challenges that you list, which are so many, maybe let's just stick to a few that you elect to talk about. What have you done for the past 4 years that you've been at the helm to regularize or normalize some of those anomalies that you found?
The interesting one that I will start with is the area of procurement. There we reviewed the processes. We introduced internal controls that were required to make sure that there was segregation of duties. Because when I started, the same person was able to prepare a document for an RFQ to go out and be the same person who receive responses, be the same person who decide who gets awarded that RFQ. But there were no proper registers that will be kept in place. There will also be no proper register to indicate who submitted when. Then we introduced the rule that the person preparing for this thing to go out is not the one who's going to be receiving.
Yeah.
2, we made it electronically, that submissions are going to be made through a particular email, which only the SCM practitioners can be able to send and respond. Others can only view.
Yeah.
And then we introduced that the RFQ responses as well, like the tenders, must have an evaluation team, which must include one SCM practitioner and the end users, so that these things are done and there is a record. I then introduced something else on the tender processes, that we needed to prevent irregular expenditure or any significant non-compliance that will result in irregularity.
Yeah.
So we introduced that all tenders whose budget or actual award is above 5 million must be subjected to a probity audit before the appointment letter is issued. Okay. What probity audit does, they go through the tender process to check if it has complied with Section 217 of the Constitution of this country, Section 51 of the PFMA, and the prescription of the entities, this case CETA's SCM policy.
Yeah.
And everything is confirmed as competitive, fair, and transparent. That's when you can issue the letter. That was then assisting us to cap the irregular expenditure, because most of the time we were finding these things are only picked at the time when AG is auditing. And by then you may have spent millions and you're going to have this ballooning expenditure. With that, and taking certain powers which were sitting with SCM managers that they were capable of appointing bid committees, we took it away, that that's a preserve of the accounting authority or senior management. We did that. And with those improvements, at the time, in my first 6 months, we did a probity audit, internal audit, audited. There was 0 findings on SCM. But I can assure you immediately there were other people in charge. Internal audit started picking issues because people were resisting. One of the resistance that I suffered was that we needed to place certain people on suspension because forensic reports were saying they were responsible for corrupt activities in the SCM environment. And guess what they did? They retaliated and went out and said he's corrupt, he's interfering. Even a simple thing where you have to sign an appointment letter and you review its grammar and its professional presentation, how it looks. They call that interference because they didn't want somebody who reviews. They wanted somebody who just rubber stamp. And many a times, I even got forensic reports that at certain point in times, in certain procurements, they have even forged my signature. That's how serious it is. That was the cancer that was there that we had to deal with. It's for us, we are happy that during our term, we didn't have new irregular expenditure.
Asibambe le video la kodwa kuhle umzwile ezikhulumela yena ubaba uMalusi Shezi obeka iCEO ye construction CETA. Ya ubekile naye indlela abeke ngayo kodwa whistleblower ikubekile naye amaphutha wakhe yabona yena ukhuluma ngezinto ebezingahambi kahle wazibala zonke izinto kodwa ke ubala izinto yena afika azinqando bese uCEO engicabanga ukuthi lento akhuluma ngayo ukuthi udibane nayo angisho mina ukuthi uyenzile lento i-whistleblower ethu uyenzile kodwa ngiyayikholwa i-whistleblower uma phela besidla nawe uma besenza corruption nawe uma usesesikhundleni thina expect ukuthi kufanele siqhubeke senze corruption awukwazi wena ukuthi ungangena esikhundleni bese utshela thina singasayenza into kanti besiyenza nawe angikusoli mayethi yena khona abantu there were some people who were resisting it's because of i-whistleblower ngiyayikholwa manje ngenxa ukuthi ngikholwa i-whistleblower ngiyabona ukuthi abantu laba bathi hoyi lento besiyenza nawe manje kuza kanjani ukuthi wena makungena wena esikhundleni bese ufuna ukuvala umpompi kanti besidla nawe so ingakho ke ngithi ufanele ukuthi athi abantu ba resista ufanele ukusho njalo nawe uwe nje wazi ukuthi lo muntu besidla naye bese egcineni kosuku athi lo muntu lo ayi useyawuvala umpompi kanjani ngcono uqhamuka umunye umuntu obengadli obengenzi nathi corruption lapho ke ngakuzwa ke lokho asibambe le video ngicela ukuze ukuphawula kwakho la ku comment section ulike ucomment ushare ungasidonatela noma ngamalini khona account ku comment ephiniwe mina nawe sidibane kwi video landelayo ngiyabonga.